One.
Okay, got it. Okay. We are here. This is a Daily Freeman debate. We've done many of these for the past 4 years. And this is another one. Today, the debate will be between Sarahana Shrestha, the incumbent 103rd Assembly member, and her challenger, Gabi Madden. They are running for the Democratic line for this November's election in a January 25th Democratic primary. There is, just to remind everybody, there is early voting. Make sure I got the dates right here. It is Sunday, June 15th. Saturday, June 15th to Sunday, June 23rd. And then the actual primary day is June 25th. So welcome you guys for coming on. We're going to give 3 minutes each to an opening statement, and then 3 minutes each for a closing statement. Yvonne and I will be asking the questions. Some of them, in general, came from readers. And this debate will last about an hour, we think. But we will interrupt like 5 minutes before 12 or 10 minutes before 12, just so we can get those closing statements in. All right, so we will start out with an opening statement from Sarahana. Gabi will get the closing statement. And Sarahana, go right ahead with your opening statement. Thanks very much for coming, you guys.
Great, thank you so much. So my name is Sarahana Shrestha. I am the current Assembly member for District 103rd, which includes 14 localities. I ran as a newcomer in 2022 because as a climate organizer, I was pretty frustrated with the outsized influence of corporations on our government and seeing some of the very common sense legislation on the table not moving. And this being the fact that despite we have a Democratic supermajority in our state legislature right now. So I ran and we knocked a total of over 56,000 doors across the district to win this election, including the primary election as well as the general election. And so far, I've served a little over 17 months in my first term. I was inspired to run because I was working on a bill called the Build Public Renewables Act, which authorizes the New York Power Authority to build new renewable energy and to use some of those revenues to fund automatic discounts for low and moderate income households and also create new union jobs. So I ran on this bill and my election was seen as a mandate for this bill. And when I got into office, we were able to work very quickly to pass this through the budget, even though I was told when I was running that this was a great idea, but it was not going to pass in the New York State legislature, but we did pass it. And right now we're seeing through the implementation of it so that it does what we intend to do. In my second year, I passed the next big priority, which is good cause eviction. And this was despite a lot of opposition from the real estate industry. And just the fact that, again, it was included in the budget is a testament to people like me being fearless about going up against the real estate industry and pushing for tenant protections. I have actually cornered REBNY lobbyists in the halls of Albany to set them straight on what they're doing to undermine tenant protections, which is why they are spending a lot of money against people like me. But I will not be leaving this seat until I pass more of my priorities as a team player for big transformative changes. One of them is the New York Health Act. We have a broken healthcare system. The other is our public schools and SUNYs should not have to beg for money every year. We need permanent and sustainable funding for our public institutions. So that's why I'm running for re-election, because lots of these fights are big fights that will take at least 5 to 10 years. But I've had a very productive first 1.5 years, and I'm very excited to continue with my colleagues on pushing for all of these priorities.
Okay, Gabi, you're up.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that. So, Gabi Madden, candidate for New York State Assembly, looking to represent the 103rd Assembly District, encompassing Ulster and Northern Dutchess County, 14 municipalities, and just over 130,000 constituents. So, I got started in public service right after college in 2018, serving in the district office with Assembly member Kevin Cahill. Serving in that office really got me hooked on public service, and constituent service work is really my passion. And so, I've been working in the state legislature ever since. It's been about 6 years now, serving as clerk to the New York State Insurance Committee, chief of staff in the state assembly, as well as deputy chief of staff in the state senate, serving with Senator James Skoufis, who represents Orange County. I was born and raised in Kingston. I've been living in Ulster County my entire life, with the exception of my college years. But I was eager to return in 2018 to serve my community. And so the past 2 years serving within the state senate, though, there was a vacancy in representation for our district, and I knew that I had the tools and the skill set to really perform for my community and provide a legislative portfolio that is built from the ground up, working with my constituents and my mayors, supervisors, school district officials to really bolster our services here in Ulster and Northern Dutchess County, and making sure that we're delivering policy proposals specific to solutions to serve Ulster and Northern Dutchess, as well as constituent services that are subpar. Right now, what we're getting is basic constituent services that are not always available to our constituency, and I think that constituent service work is one of the pillars of public office. And so, when I see that vacancy occurring here in district for our community, as well as up in Albany, with regard to policy being advanced, it was one red flag after the next, and that's what really drove me to run. Never thought I would be running as for office myself. I really enjoy getting the job done behind the scenes, doing the nitty gritty work. That's the role of a chief of staff, and so. But recognizing this need, I knew that I needed to put my community first and work with my constituents to make sure that they get the representation that they deserve. And so that's why I'm running, to bring the next generation of representation to the Mid-Hudson Valley, serve the community that helped to raise me, and make sure that we're performing at the highest standards with our approach to governance and serving the people. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about why I decided to run. My platforms going into this race are, of course, housing, utilities, as well as healthcare. Those are the major issues facing our constituency. And so those are not my top priorities. Again, always keeping the community front of mind, and making sure that all of my decision making is with regard to my constituents' best interests. So really looking forward to building that legislative portfolio from the ground up, serving the community the way that they should be served, making sure that we are bringing our tax dollars back home in the millions year after year, making sure I'm working with municipal and federal counterparts to really maximize representation. But yeah, that's a little bit about me and why I decided to run and my platforms going into this race. And thank you guys for hosting us today.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll get right to it. And Gabby just mentioned some of the top topics of the day with constituents. And from what we can tell, constituents are very concerned about Central Hudson. It appears time and time again when we ask the political leadership in place now, that time and time again, they say that is the top complaint that they get. Central Hudson billing, Central Hudson courts. So it is something that New York State Legislature has tried to deal with. Central Hudson says they're on the mend, that their billing is getting better, that they've reverted to the monthly billing, but still the PSC, Public Service Commission, has undergone an investigation and has not really completed that yet. And also, as you both probably know, Central Hudson is asking for double-digit rate delivery increases to gas and electricity. So anyway, Sarahana, you first on this one, I guess. Recently, you were part of a group of people that were in front of your office pushing for this bill that you have pushed for. Not this bill, but you have pushed for the public power thing in the past, ever since you've been campaigning. And I wonder, at one time you had said that you didn't think there was a political will to get this done. So I guess what's changed since then, and what's your what's your take on this bill that's been submitted to have a government take over Central Hudson? Go ahead.
So first of all, I want to start by saying Central Hudson issues are by no means over. Just last week, our constituent contacted us because Central Hudson showed up unannounced at their door with a $1,500 bill with no notices and said that if it was not paid on the spot, they were going to shut off their account. And they did pay this $1,500 bill on the spot, but not everyone is going to be able to do that. Yesterday, I heard from a constituent in Assembly Members Chris Tague's district, because lots of people from the service territory have actually started contacting our office because they've heard of our office as the expert on Central Hudson. This particular constituent from Assembly Member Tague's district received a bill late. She lives in an RV, and the bill was $6,000. They're not supposed to be back billing like this right now. And in the midst of an investigation, they've already started collection activities. We have been pushing for a bill to not allow those collection activities. It just passed in the Senate. It got to the floor in the Assembly, which sets us up well to pass it next year. And, you know, the problem, though, is that we have around 7 or so corporate monopolies in our state for utilities that are in the business of delivering energy, not generating energy. And our utility regulatory system is set up to be in their favor. The decisions that are made in these PSC proceedings, in particular to rate increases, are on the whole in the favor of utilities because the law allows them to recoup these costs. So my background is, as a climate organizer, I've been focused on public power, which is how I was working on the Build Public Renewables Act. I was volunteering with an organization called the Public Power New York Coalition, which is a statewide coalition. And when I was asked if we can make Central Hudson public, and I said there is not a political will for it, I was answering that question about that particular time. But we are in the business of creating political will. Nothing has political will when it begins in our state legislature, but we have to create those conditions. So we've been working on this Hudson Valley Power Authority bill for over 9 months, but really longer if you count the time I have spent researching and thinking about this legislation. So we finally introduced it. It's a very long 65-page bill, and this is the beginning of creating that political will and those conditions that we need to pass this bill. And Central Hudson is the least favorable corporate utility in New York State. They are also the smallest. They are followed by many other bad utilities such as NYSEG. And so we want to lead the movement for public power in New York. San Diego is also starting their movement. So this is a conversation that's happening nationwide.
Okay, great. Gabi, what do you think of this?
Yeah, so
I know that you have said in the past that the state legislature needs to take tangible actions like now to rectify the Central Hudson issue. So what do you think needs to be done? And do you think this bill has a chance of any chance of getting past the New York State legislature one day?
yeah, absolutely. So Central Hudson has been an issue since day one on the job for me. I've been dealing with rate hike proposals on numerous occasions at this point. And so I know that this needs to be addressed immediately. And so I approach all of these issues that my constituents face with, you know, an immediate solution, as well as those midterm and long-term sustainable solutions as well. And so my response to this would be, yes, I'm on board for a publicly owned utility. That's been part of my multi-prong approach to addressing Central Hudson. But I know that it's a long-term solution because it's going to take at least a decade to actually get implemented. And that's because it requires the buy-in of neighboring legislative districts. So our service territory for Central Hudson is beyond just that of Ulster and Northern Dutchess. And so we have to consider, you know, these other legislators that might not be on board with this bill right off the bat. We're going to have to make sure that we get them to advocate and co-sponsor this measure and be fully supportive of it. In addition to that, we also have broken infrastructure as it stands with Central Hudson. And so I'm very weary to adopt broken infrastructure on taxpayer shoulders. And so that's why I see that as more of a long-term solution. My immediate immediate solution here would be to address those delivery fees, right? So two pieces of legislation right off the bat that I would be looking to advance through the state assembly would be one, to standardize the methodology used to calculate those delivery fees while setting a cap to try to rein in those delivery fees. The second would be differentiating the calculation used to deliver that of gas and that of electric. Electric doesn't require as much infrastructure to deliver, and so they should not be priced at the same rate. And so this rate hike proposal that we're experiencing right now, this is specific to delivery fees. So we know that that's where we need to start to rein in those costs. With Senator James Skoufis's office, he is the chair of the Investigations and Government Operations Committee. And so I was lucky enough to be able to lead that investigation into utilities statewide with a focus on Central Hudson, among a handful of other utilities. That legislative report reaped a lot of solutions, and addressing delivery fees was one of them. Again, that would provide immediate relief for our constituencies, and I would be working with the energy chair in both of the committees within the state assembly and the state senate. Those measures that I had mentioned earlier with regard to delivery fees, one of them is carried by the energy chair within the state senate, Senator Parker, and so we know that it's a strong bill that really has potential here. And so that's why, that's the immediate solution. That midterm solution is re-regulating supply and hedging practices in New York State, deregulated in 1996 in an effort to build competition, but we don't see any competition here. And so I also think it's important that we do a deep dive into the Public Service Commission and the Department of Public Service, which has funded millions of dollars with your taxpayer dollars. But, meanwhile, are they really acting in the best interest of the consumer? I don't think so, if they're approving rate hike after rate hike. And so I think we need to do a deep dive to make sure that their leadership is really acting in the best interest of consumers, while also ensuring that if they need their enforcement powers expanded to rein in these utilities, that's the job of the state legislature. And so that's what I would be looking to do. And then that long-term solution, again, adopting a municipal cooperative model for our utilities and utilizing what state resources are going to open up under the CLCPA, Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, a bill that I helped to advance in 2019. So I think that there's more immediate solutions than just that long-term goal of a public utility, and especially introducing it. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so it sounds like you both are in favor of a government takeover eventually, whatever the time limit is, of Central Hudson. But Central Hudson has said that that's gonna be a lot of tax money lost to the state. How would you respond to that? I mean, I'm not sure how much it is that Central Hudson pays the state every year in taxes, but I'm sure it's probably a lot, and that that will be lost. How would you respond to that, Gabi? Go ahead.
2 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is going to be a loss to our tax dollars, obviously. I mean, Central Hudson is one of the biggest taxpayers within our county. And so I think that that's an important thing to note. But also, again, long term, this is something that's not going to be implemented for at least a decade, I would say, if not longer. And so that's why, introducing a bill like this just a few weeks before the end of session, you never want to introduce legislation just to check a box. You want to make sure that it's actually providing the solution as intended for your constituency and providing that immediate relief. And so that's why, again, I see it as a long-term goal, but also, as we make this transition to a green energy economy, we want to think about who's going to be administering our geothermal, our wind, our solar. I'm not that comfortable having our gas companies be that administrator. And so that's why I do see the shift to a public utility being so crucial, but again, a long-term goal. And by utilizing some of those resources that will be extended from the state under the CLCPA as we get closer to those deadlines where we have to meet these massive goals under the CLCPA. And in order to do so, the state recognizes they have to expand those resources made available to municipalities so that we can make these changes, such as adopting Central Hudson as a publicly owned utility. But again, let's make sure that they pay their fair share to get their infrastructure fixed, fix the problems that they have caused before we take it on as a public utility and a taxpayer burden. And so that would be, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Nope, that's it.
You got more time left.
Okay, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, all right, great. Sarahana, go ahead. Again, the Central Hudson says they pay a ton in taxes, and that revenue will be lost if the government takes it over. The state is going to have to pay Central Hudson to take it over. How do you justify those kinds of costs?
So first of all, I want to say that, we did 7 town halls last year. And one of the things that we walked through was why short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals are all important, which is why our office is doing something in each of those buckets. I have introduced 4 short-term goals. I have co-sponsored many other short-term to medium-term solutions. So we're not going to be ignoring that. But that doesn't mean we cannot start talking about the long-term solution. The reason this bill was introduced at the end of the session was so that in the fall, we have lots of opportunities to do more town halls and to start talking to other legislators in the off-session time about this bill and do teach-ins, go to other parts of the service territory and start organizing. So that was the strategic decision for introducing this bill right now. I also want to say that, the broken infrastructure, we are already paying for it right now. We are paying lots of money, millions of dollars for broken infrastructure, and that's ratepayers. Central Hudson would be acquired by a state authority. This state authority, the Hudson Valley Power Authority, is not funded by taxpayers. It has the authority to issue bonds in much the same way that New York Power Authority is not funded by taxpayers. And this has been the model for many public power campaigns, because the goal of this legislation is to decrease the cost and the burden on the ratepayers and not to increase. And in fact, we specify that this legislation, when it's enacted, must increase rates. And historically, when corporate utilities are purchased, the rates go down. That was the case in Long Island Power Authority. That was the case in New York Power Authority as well. As for the lost taxes, there's also already a solution for it in practice. Publicly owned utilities can pay pilot payment in lieu of taxes to preserve those revenues for localities. All of this is described in the HudsonValleyPowerAuthority.com website, where we have an FAQ. And the CLCPA goals are very important. They are not being taken seriously by our corporate utilities. We have very little mechanism for holding it accountable. And the instrumental person who was responsible for passing that bill in 2019 is actually our county executive, Jen Metzger, who was at the time at the in the state Senate and really led this effort.
Okay. All right, let's move on to a second topic, I guess, and this one has also received a lot of attention in our area, and that is the Gaza conflict. It has sparked a lot of protests across America, including one here in our neighborhood at SUNY, where some people, well, a bunch of people got arrested a few weeks ago. And Sarahana, you have backed a bill that is called "Not on Our Dime," ending New York funding of Israeli settler violence act, which in essence would prevent or limit nonprofit support of Israel. And I guess we since this is a major topic of today, and that this bill has been introduced, we need to get both of your opinions on it. So Sarahana, you go ahead. Why do you back this bill, and what's your position?
Yeah, so there is hardly any important issue that does not have local implications. And I want to start by saying Hudson Valley has historically been a very anti-war community, and you can see that playing out right now as well. That the anti-war movement is out in full force, and I am concerned about anti-Semitism as well as Islamophobia that is on the rise when something very divisive happens on the global stage. So I've been working to also make sure that we do not conflate Jewish people as a whole with actions of Israel, and that is a very important tone setting to do before we really pursue this topic as a whole. And the fact that 2/3 of voters, including 77% of Democrats, according to latest polls, support a permanent ceasefire. And that is because people like me who grew up in a civil war know that war can be a perpetual cycle of violence, and we need serious commitments to make everybody safe and to end violence. Now, not on our dime is a state level bill where where we are losing revenues in tax exemption to charities that are funneling that money into war crimes and settler violence. But not only that, some of them have actually been spending money on spying on American professors and students. They've spent money to intervene in elections on behalf of Donald Trump. So they are even undermining local democracy. So if New York State is giving them tax exemption status, this is a good governance bill to say that they should be held accountable and in check. And this is a bill that gives the Office of the Attorney General power to do so.
Okay. Gabi, you think it's important?
So this bill was identified as a non-starter by both majority leaders in both the state assembly and the state senate. And so I think that, you know, I would have liked to have seen our assembly representative advancing policy specific to the issues we're facing within Ulster and Northern Dutchess, rather than rallying for a non-starter bill that is obviously rejected by Democratic leadership. So I would not be supportive of that measure. I would be focused on advancing policy to help seniors stay in their homes, for example, advancing policy to ensure that the universal pre-K can be rolled out as intended. So I think that there's other important measures to be focused on here, specific to Ulster and Northern Dutchess, rather than, again, rallying on a non-starter bill that's not supported by Democratic leadership, especially when there are so many other priorities being ignored on behalf of our community. And so that's not a measure that I would be supportive of. And again, there's a lot of other state level priorities to focus on at this point with regard to the crises that we face at home. We need real solutions for the real problems that we're facing. So that's where my focus would lie.
Sarahana, you want to you respond to that? You know, that what Gabi just said. She's against that bill, and she thinks that other policies, more local, should be the focus of the legislature. What do you say?
Absolutely. So first of all, you know, this is a local bill. We're talking about New York State taxpayer money, right? So this is a local bill. As for the leadership's comments, those were before Israel started its war. So those comments were made before October 7th last year. But I want to touch more on this idea of non-starter bills. If we are going to accept that some things are not doable, then why are we running for office? If we're trying to pass a bill carried by the energy chairs of both chambers, our support is not needed. They're going to pass that bill. We don't need to run for office to pass bills that are already going to pass. You know what else has been called a non-starter? The New York Health Act. It's been kicking around in the legislature since the 70s. We're not going to give up on universal health care and long-term care, especially when the Medicaid budget is on the chopping block every year and aging New Yorkers don't have a plan for long-term care. We are here to make non-starter possibilities. That's our job. At one point, women's right to vote was called a non-starter. Ending slavery was called a non-starter. All of those things change once you start taking actions and organizing, which is why I ran for office. And that's what I'm going to try to do in my more years to come.
Okay, let's go to something else. And another major topic of New York State and this area is housing. We hear that all the time. Rents are too high. Cost of homes is too high, particularly in this area. And the legislature has tried to rectify that in various ways. And one was the good cause eviction law, which did make it into the 2025 budget, but some supporters of the good cause law has said it's a watered down version and doesn't really do much of anything. And I'm wondering if that doesn't work, you know, if we can't get a good cause eviction thing passed, what else can we do to make sure the people can you know, afford these or keep these rents at reasonable prices? Gabi, go ahead.
2 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So just working off the progress of the Rent Stabilization and Tenant Protection Act of 2019 that I was lucky enough to work on. So that bill had advanced through both houses, signed into law, and allowed our municipalities to opt in based on vacancy rate data that they had collected. And so we saw that underway with the city of Kingston. There was a roadblock that they had experienced, but at the end of the day, they realized that this vacancy rate data should be collected based on how the municipality sees best fit. We should leave that flexibility to our municipalities because the rental units here in Ulster County are going to look a lot different than that in Long Island. Even the rental units within the city of Kingston versus that in the town of Gardner or Olive are going to look a lot different. And so I want to build off of that progress and make sure that we're advancing, other resources to actually solve this crisis. So how do we get more funding to our municipal building codes and zoning departments so that they can roll out these accessory dwelling units as they intended? I want to utilize the existing mechanisms we already have locally and just maximize our efficiency in utilizing those. And so making sure that, when I'm talking to municipal leaders, they want to roll out these accessory dwelling units, but they don't have the resources necessary to do so. And that's one of the perks of having that open line of communication with the mayors and supervisors of the municipalities in which you represent. You can be and, have a finger on the pulse on the issues that they're experiencing with state laws that were rolled out that aren't actually achieving what was intended because of these different roadblocks. So I know that they need additional funding resources to help bolster those different departments so that we can actually get these accessory dwelling units online, providing our seniors an additional stream of income, helping them stay in their houses while adding additional rental stock for our tenants. Additionally, we want to make sure that we can study traffic, septic, and water infrastructure impacts that these additional populations will have that are moving into these ADUs. We have the highest rate of manufactured homes here in Ulster and Northern Dutchess counties. And so that's unique to our district. How do we better protect the tenants of those manufactured homes? Right of first refusal, allow for them to join together and be able to buy that property before a developer comes in and picks it up because it's ripe for development. It has water and septic. And that's something I've worked directly with constituents on. And so I know that that's a solution that's going to address some of those issues. Finding more savvy, creative ways to address the issues locally that we face is my approach to governance.
Great. Okay. Sarahana, go ahead. I know that you were or have been a supporter of the good cause eviction law as originally intended, but it didn't get that way once it got in to the budget. And in fact, there are some municipalities, like in Kingston, where a segment of the lawmaking body said, we shouldn't pass this the way it is. We shouldn't opt in. Because that's what each community has to do, right? Opt into this law. What do you think? I mean, after that, what do you think can be done? The good cause thing, while it seems to be a positive direction towards getting rent into a reasonable rate. It did not. So what do you think? What else can be done?
Even though good cause eviction, the version that we passed, we were disappointed because it unnecessarily leaves out a lot of tenants. I want to be very clear that it's going to cover a lot of tenants that were never covered before. So on the whole, this is a very positive direction, though it was disappointing because those unnecessary carve-outs were introduced by the governor's office in the last minute. And I also want to reiterate once again that even the part that we got into the budget would not have gotten in if it wasn't for people like me. And I want to talk about two things I was able to win before it went into a vote. I was able to win a provision that upstate localities or any localities outside New York City can strengthen the number of units provision of the bill when they opt in. So Albany has opted in with the strongest possible combination, and City of Kingston is looking at doing the same thing. So even though I'm disappointed that maybe more conservative localities may not opt in at all, localities like City of Kingston are going to be able to opt into the strongest version and cover a lot of tenants. The other thing I was able to win was that there was an unnecessary limit to who could opt in. Smaller villages were on the list of municipalities that cannot opt in, and I fought for that provision to be removed altogether because Village of Rhinebeck might be interested in opting in. Tivoli might be interested in opting in. So I'm very happy that those two things were in, and I am currently providing support to any local representatives who want to understand the bill better and opt in. I also want to clarify that we hear from mayors and supervisors all the time, whether it's issues on state laws or whether it's things that they want us to fight for in the budget, and we take all of those up. And that is obviously a very obvious and necessary part of this job. But we passed a lot of things in the budget for housing this year, which is going to help, but it's not going to address the entire crisis. So we are looking at a social housing bill that I did a town hall in Kingston a few weeks ago. This is to revive what New York was doing in the 70s, where New York was building under Governor Rockefeller affordable, high-quality homes for New Yorkers. We built 33 homes in 5 years, but then we stopped doing that. So we're going to revive this with the social housing bill and add more guardrails to it to build permanently affordable and high-quality homes for mixed income.
Let's follow up with that, Gabby. What do you think of that social housing bill to create this new authority to build homes?
I think, again, it's one of these massive bill packages, which are great and they're great to work on, but they take a lot more time to actually advance. And so let's look at some nitty gritty solutions that are going to be achieved quicker and provide relief more immediately, because that's what we need for our constituency. And just going back to good cause, it's interesting to hear all of these perks within that when the incumbent voted against that bill. And so that's where my confusion kicks in. If there were so many things achieved within that measure to be touted, why vote in the negative on it, jeopardizing our access to additional resources, again, that our constituents rely on? To me, that just doesn't seem to add up. And so I think that, there's other more niche ways of addressing the housing crisis specific to Ulster and Northern Dutchess counties versus that of the rest of the state. Some of these larger measures are taking into account that of Long Island, New York City, et cetera, without a focus necessarily on this community. And this community is the focus of the representative for District 103, or at least it should be. That's what we deserve. And so, again, finding these other solutions that are more specific to Ulster and Northern Dutchess County that can be achieved on a quicker timeline and provide that immediate relief, and utilizing that partnership with municipal officials to make sure that it's rolled out as intended and providing solutions to their communities.
Okay, Sarahana, just a response on that, on the point about voting against the good cause while saying, that it was good in parts.
1 minute.
Yep. So, if the budget was in actual jeopardy, I would not be voting no. Democrats often symbolically vote no to express discontent on some of the things that are in this one budget bill out of 10 that's often referred to as the big ugly, and is referred to as the big ugly because it's crammed with lots of policy that people may not agree with. And also, I want to clarify, this is not financial bills that I'm voting no against. So it was a symbolic vote along with other Democratic colleagues, including Senator Skoufis, who has endorsed my opponent. He also voted no for different reasons. But the reason I voted no is because the people I am most accountable to are the people I represent. 7 out of 9 Kingston Common Council members wrote me a letter saying they would like me to vote no. Tenants in my district sent me emails saying they would like me to vote no. And this whole time, we were very clear, this is a symbolic no. I voted no because this deal leaves out upstate tenants unnecessarily, leaves out housing access vouchers unnecessarily, which royally puts Ulster County in a very tough spot. And so it is always necessary when we're holding each other accountable in the government to express discontent symbolically one way or the other. And Democrats do this all the time.
Gabi, just back to you on that. How would you have voted on the good cause matter if you had been in office?
Definitely. Being a freshman member to the New York State Legislature, it would be my priority to make sure that I'm carrying my weight and contributing on behalf of my community, and making sure that I'm putting forth policy that's sound for my district first and foremost, but that's also going to contribute to New York State's role as a leader amongst the rest of the nation with regard to our legislative solutions. And so I think it's important that when we are new to the state legislature, that we are using our time wisely and that we are contributing and and carrying our weight, making sure that we're introducing, authoring new bills that are providing sound solutions. And government is a team sport, so working with those majority colleagues is crucial. And so I think that, that symbol, that message that is being sent with that no vote is, a slap in the face to constituents, because again, at the end of the
So
day, it
Gabi, would
restricts
you
access.
would have voted yes
On the budget bill? Yeah, absolutely.
on the good
And
cause thing? Yeah.
good cause was included within the state budget, yes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely, I would have. And I believe that Senator Michelle Hinchy was supportive of that measure, even with the changes that were made in the final bill. And so, referencing Senator Skoufis's no vote on the state budget, that was with regard to other issues that were encountered specific to his constituents that negatively impacted his constituents, and the UPK program that he had authored and introduced that was being rolled out, that was then cut last minute by the governor as a trade out for these foundation aid cuts that she was threatening. And so that's something that, again, him being a senior legislator at this point and have been contributed so much to the Senate majority, his no vote carries a lot more symbolism than a freshman member who hasn't authored and contributed new policy that's really going to advance New York State and this community. And so I think that no vote, again, restricts access to resources for our constituents, and that should not be the mission of an assembly representative.
Okay. Let's go to another whole different topic. EMS and ambulance service all over the state is sort of in a crisis mode at this point. And Ulster County in particular did a study which said that the ambulance service is at a crossroads. And in Kingston, they came up with a unique idea for the government to actually take over the ambulance service, and the municipality now operates it on its own without having to pay private enterprise to deliver that service. What do you think the legislature can do to ease this situation with ambulances service across the state, or is it that maybe more municipalities should take heed of what Kingston has done and start to take it over? Sarahana, what do you think?
So the EMS piece was another disappointing piece in the budget, because we were talking about EMSs since, the beginning of the year. And, it just goes to show that the budget process is a very broken process, and there is absolutely no need to rubber stamp things that you are unhappy with, precisely because it does affect your constituents. So because we were not able to deliver everything we wanted to on the EMS front, our office has just nominated Ulster County Emergency Operations Center with 40,000 grant to just help a little bit, and also to Olive First Aid Unit as well. And in the last days of the session, we also passed a bill that I co-sponsor to allow Medicaid to reimburse ambulance services to treat in place, and we hope that the governor will sign it. But across the state, all of my legislators were raising the alarm on our EMS infrastructure and resources in this state, but a lot of times it fell on deaf ears when it came to negotiations in the budget. So we're trying to pick up the pieces and do what we can do, but there are more bills that I co-sponsor that I hope to push next on that front. And similarly, also we have concerns about fire departments, in particular volunteer firefighters. We also just nominated Port Ewan Fire Department for 40,000. We've created the capital funding bucket at the state level, but volunteer firefighters are really struggling with attracting more firefighters. So we're also trying to increase mental health resources for them. I pretty much co-sponsor any bill that firefighters in the district tell me to, because we're trying to do everything we can. And on both these fronts, EMS and firefighters, we're exploring and accepting, all new ideas that we can put on the table to be useful at the state level, because we absolutely need to be.
Okay, Gabi, go EMS in your hometown. It was, as I mentioned before, kind of a unique thing. I think it may be Kingston may be the only municipality in the state that did this,
Yeah.
took over its own ambulance service. What do you think can be done? And do you think that other municipalities may follow Kingston's suit and start doing it themselves?
Yeah, so a great practice that I have been pursuing in a staff capacity is hosting these first responder roundtables in advance of legislative session and the budget negotiation, so that I can hear directly from these first responders, hear their needs, hear the issues they're facing, funding obstacles, so that I know what these legislative solutions are going to look like going into session, and what funding I'm going to want to be securing throughout those budget negotiations. And so
Mhm.
in my last post, we had administered nearly $1 million in first responder grants, which is just tremendous for these folks. Between the equipment, the training programs necessary, there's so much that's needed right now, and they're still not even classified as an essential service in New York State, which is such a slap in the face once we came out of COVID. And so I think that it's important that we're classifying these services as essential services so that they get the resources necessary. I think it's important that we're bolstering the funding that we're securing for them. So closer to that $1 million range, being that they are in such a crisis right now. Further than that, there's other incentives to recruit new folks, getting some more SUNY CUNY credits so that these folks can get involved, right? Right now, we don't have the volunteerism that we used to have because people are working so many jobs. They don't have the time to volunteer. And so we have to make it easier for them to get involved. And so again, offering free SUNY and CUNY would be one great incentive. The mental health component is tremendous. And also addressing that issue of reimbursement, right? A lot of the times when these folks get ambulance services, the reimbursement check coming from insurance goes directly to the patient, not necessarily the ambulance provider. And that's proven very difficult for our EMS providers. And so there's ways to address this issue. Funding is a major component, but also incentivizing new folks to come into the field is crucial. And so again, the SUNY CUNY, making sure that we have additional tax credits, that we already have a tax credit for our firemen, our volunteer firemen, but if we could expand that, that would be ideal. And so that's really what I would be looking to do, is making sure that we're bolstering the support for these individuals on a policy perspective, a funding perspective, and a community outreach perspective. If we need help recruitment, then we can partner with you there and make sure that we're getting our community colleges that are in district on board, our higher education institutions on board, our BOCES, our high school students, so that they're informed of the opportunities.
Okay. All right. Very good. Speaking of mental health, Health Alliance Hospital, which has been kind of going back and forth with the state on funding that they were short of in their 2025 budget. But they did manage to create a new behavioral health unit at Health Alliance Hospital with 20 beds. And it's supposed to be completed very soon, with some time opening in 2025 early. It's taken a while. There was a lot of political leadership speaking out against the closure of that unit at the time and demanding that it come back. And that was maybe 3 years ago. Finally, it is completed, but it's 20 beds. There used to be 60. Is that enough, Sarahana, to serve the behavioral health needs in Ulster County and beyond?
No, it's not enough. And the reason why hospitals don't like to do these beds is because of the way they are reimbursed based on the Medicaid reimbursement rates for recouping their money. So that's one way of saying that the way we fund our hospitals is deeply broken. Right now, 30% of hospitals across the state are in some form of financial instability. And it was, Kingston Hospital was on that list. And what happened when they were denied the Vital Access Provider Assistance Program by the governor's office was that I and Senator Hinchey intervened to at least get them a loan in the meantime so that they wouldn't have to pause or cut down anything that they were doing. But what we also did in the budget is add $75 million for this program, because we disagreed with the governor that it is not our responsibility to help stabilize these hospitals at the moment. So, as someone who has had to deal with very difficult mental health struggles in my own family, I take mental health very seriously. It is, one of the first steps to public safety and stable neighborhoods. I'm also the co-chair of the mental health subcommittee in the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian caucus, which is the most powerful caucus in the state legislature. And I've been in close communication with Health Alliance about these beds going up, because you're right, this issue started, long before I even ran for office, and it's taken quite a while. In the meantime, people have already had to bear the consequences of not having those beds accessible. I also want to mention this bill I'm championing called Treatment Not Jail, which is a bill that would create a mental health court in every county. And in this year's budget, we were able to include $8 million to sort of start getting that set up, because it has wide support in the state at the moment. So there's lots we can do for mental health across fronts, but I think we need more beds is the short answer to that.
Yeah. Okay. Gabby, go ahead. On the mental
Yeah,
health,
so
the behavioral health unit at Health Alliance Hospital. Again, it was a long time coming, but apparently 20 beds. But
right.
there
I
used
think
to
that
be
this is
60.
absolutely unacceptable. I think that 20 beds is unacceptable. I think the fact that we don't have beds online right now is unacceptable. So these beds were taken offline during COVID out of extreme precaution, right? This unit was going to be designated as additional COVID beds if necessary. They were never actually utilized. And then when the state of emergency was lifted by New York State, these beds still did not come online. And that's illegal, right? So they have a certificate of need that is issued by New York State Department of Health. That certificate of need right now is not being fulfilled. That's against the law. And so if those 60 beds are not online, then it is our job as state representatives to hold government accountable and make sure that this enforcement authority, DOH, is utilizing their enforcement powers to make sure that these beds get back online and that this facility operates by the law. And
So that would
so
be the
DOH
60 beds, right?
60 beds, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
DOH has the ability to levy fines when a hospital facility is operating illegally and not abiding by that certificate of need. And so that's what has occurred in other parts of the state where these detox beds and these behavioral health facilities were taken offline. DOH came in, utilized those enforcement powers, levied fines, and it got these beds back online. And so that provides relief to the constituency. Right now, my constituents have to go to Valhalla to get some of these services, and we're facing the opioid epidemic. We're facing severe mental health issues. We see suicides off the Rhine Cliff Bridge. We see suicides happening way more regularly than we ever did within this district. So we know mental health is a huge issue. I've lost so many friends to the opioid epidemic itself. And I'm not going to allow that to happen at all again. And so I'm dedicated to bringing these detox beds back online and leveraging those enforcement powers to work on behalf of my community and ensure that Health Alliance is abiding by that certificate of need. Because the second that we allow for that practice, we're going to see that become the standard throughout our district. And that's something that I just can't accept. Other ways that we can help with cost savings with regard to our hospital settings, let's start to address some of the payroll mobility taxes that our hospitals are paying over in Dutchess County. That could be a huge cost saver for us and really stimulate the funding flow within these hospitals. And so there are other mechanisms that we can take without threatening the viability of these healthcare facilities, but they need to abide by the law.
Okay, Gabby, thanks. And Sarahana, just back to you. So you would support 60 beds at the hospital, right? Correct? If not just the 20.
Yes, of course. And last year when the governor announced how many beds we were adding, the first thing I did is text County Executive Jen Metzger saying, "This doesn't sound enough to me. Does it to you?" And she said no. And I've also met with the Attorney General's office in terms of what to do about the fact that these requirements are not being followed. And the problem is this is actually happening across the state. So I'm focused on just getting these 20 online first, supporting in my role as a legislator to make that happen first. But that is not where this conversation is going to end, of course.
Okay, great. All right. Well, it's getting that to wrap up time. It's 11:53, right, Yvonne?
Yeah, you can put one more in.
Oh, okay. One more. With the migrants and the problem that has arisen from New York City sending migrants, I guess. Some call it a problem, some call it do not. But it has been an issue that has been of concern to some in the community. What do you guys see that as a concern now, or do you see it leveling off, that they're not doing this so much from Texas and New York City, and that what kind of resources do you think would be needed if somehow this continues, and what would you do about it? Sarahana, go ahead.
So, I really saw the concerns around migrants, asylum seekers coming in as an issue of housing crisis that we had left unattended. This really did play out to be a housing crisis, because if we don't have people to put in homes already, how are we going to deal with new people was the main concern that I heard. And that is a legitimate concern, even from people who support the idea of immigration. And that's why we needed to act on it urgently. Under the social housing bill, there are some models that have been used in places like Vienna, where you can throw up very high quality, good homes to house people very quickly. And that would be very effective in dealing with any influx of people. But, I have not heard as much concern recently as I had last year, for example, because I think that, some of the work permits issues were worked on by the state when the federal government was failing. And also there was this a shortage of workers that people were concerned about. And so if they could get some new folks coming into the state to fill that role, people were happy with that solution. So it doesn't feel as pressing, but I do want to say, one global trend is that as climate change happens, and as geopolitical conditions change, a global migration is a fact of our lives. And the thing we have to do is to be ready with a robust infrastructure. So that's our responsibility at the state level, because when people are coming into the state, if we have that infrastructure ready, we will not see as much division and concerns as we did, in the last 2 years.
All right, Gabi, go ahead on the
Yeah.
migrants issue.
No, so I don't see it as an issue. I see it as a solution, honestly. I do think that, by providing those additional offices within this district so that we can process their paperwork and get them engaged in our communities and into the workforce, that is a major solution to the workforce staffing issues that we're experiencing here in Ulster and Northern Dutchess counties. And so I really see this as being a solution. And I do think that preparedness is a big component here. And so I would love to know what was done directly for Ulster and Northern Dutchess counties the past 2 years to bolster our infrastructure, our water, our septic, our traffic patterns, our housing, all of this infrastructure that does need improvement in order to be prepared for this growing population that we're already experiencing, whether it is, migrants, or if it is, folks just moving from other parts of the nation to New York State. And so I think that we do have to have the infrastructure prepared, and that's, funding resources, but it's also making sure that you're maximizing the value of that representation by working with municipal counterparts and federal counterparts to see how you can mix and match funding streams to actually provide real life solutions that can get online here and help with some of these concerns that we're facing with regard to a housing crisis, with regard to having the bolstered infrastructure ready to address climate change. But I think that, again, by just providing for those additional offices here that can actually process the paperwork, that can actually get these work permits issued, that would be my role here. And that's, serving with congressional reps like Pat Ryan or our U.S. Senators Chuck Schumer, who have the ability to really bring those services here. And it's our job to be able to support those services, provide those additional resources, encourage our community to engage and to support one another throughout this process. But again, I see it as a solution here. I think that these individuals, this is what the Mid-Hudson Valley is based on. We are a community made up of immigrants. And I think that the American dream is still very much alive. And I think it's important that we are encouraging that and that we are supporting it. And so, again, partnering with our federal counterparts, bringing those offices locally so that folks can get all the necessary paperwork processed, get in the workforce, and start, contributing to our communities and feeling like they are invested within these communities so that they can build their lives here.
Okay. We've reached the end of the question period. Go ahead, Sarahana, go ahead. What you want to respond?
Yeah, to quickly respond, this idea of what have I done in the last 2 years. I've been in office for 1.5 years. There was a predecessor before me for many, many years, and I would like to ask the same question when my opponent was working for him, what was done then? Because a lot of problems I'm walking into are problems that existed before my time. But I do want to say at the state level, we have done some stuff. Town of Red Hook and City of Kingston just got big, hefty grants from the new sewage infrastructure money pot that the governor created for Mid-Hudson Valley. So that is happening. And Hudson Valley does welcome immigrants, which is why it welcomed me. I am the first immigrant to represent this district. And nobody cares that I was not born and raised here. The people who voted for me don't care I was not born and raised here, because what matters is who is faithful to the constituents that are being represented, who is not in the pocket of corporations, and who is willing to take on these big fights while working on the short-term solutions. That is why I was voted in, and I'm very, very proud to be the first immigrant to represent this district.
Okay. I think that's about it. We said we were going to go an hour, and it's about an hour right now. So we're going to have opening and closing statements. They're going to be 3 minutes long.
For closing.
2 minutes long. And Gabi, you're going to go first.
We're going to go, wait, no, we're going to go Sarahana first, so Gabi closes, because Sarahana went
okay,
first.
okay. So Sarahana, you go first for closing statement. Go ahead.
Sure. So being in the state legislature or any government role, it really is a roller coaster for people like me who are trying to be, honest politicians and get some change made. But the reason I'm running for re-election is because in New York State, where we have a Democratic supermajority, where the culture in Albany has changed quite a bit in the last 10 years, it's not the same Albany that used to be. More and more people like me are running for office and winning. It is full of opportunities. These opportunities are not guaranteed opportunities. You waste them if you give up on them, if you don't work on them. You could change the state's conditions if you work on them, if you organize on them. So those are the opportunities that I'm working on and seeking election to work on. I would also say it is absolutely correct that this job is really a team sport. There's hardly anybody can do individually in the state legislature. I have been very successful at building relationships with my colleagues, not just Democratic, but also Republican colleagues who, by the way, were helping me, working with me to pass this Central Hudson Collection Activity bill in the last hours of the session before time ran out. And it's about building consensus on good ideas that you believe in that are difficult to move. But how difficult they are depends on what you do. That's how everything that we value in this country was passed, because people did not give up. In fact, they launched a stronger fight to win those things, and they built a coalition to do so. I am endorsed by the Deputy Majority Leader of the Assembly, in particular for being a reliable team player, because when it comes to whipping votes for bills that I don't even carry, whipping co-sponsors for bills that I don't even carry, I'm very effective at that. I don't even care whose bill it is if it's a good bill that people need. Of course, I have introduced my own bills, but I'm not going to curry favor for my bills just because they're mine. It is very important to be a piece of the larger puzzle. And I think as somebody who is progressive, who is fierce, who is not in the pocket of corporate donors, that is exactly the role that I'm able to play.
All right, Gabi, you're up for a closing statement. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the role of the state assembly representative is serving in the highest form of local government, which means you are working hands-on with the communities that you represent. So a legislative agenda that is built from the ground up with your constituents, with your community in mind, not placing a national agenda onto a community that is aligned with your own ideologies. And I think that, again, good government is true representation that's from the ground up, working with your communities directly to set forth priorities that can be achieved to benefit the constituents you were elected to serve, not bringing, again, a national agenda with independent ideologies onto a community. And I think that that's a really important approach to governance. And I think that's a big differentiating factor. And so the past 6 years working as a chief of staff, a deputy chief of staff, I've really learned the ins and outs of the legislative process and government operations. I've worked extremely well with Democratic colleagues in both the Assembly and the state Senate. And I know that there is disappointment up in Albany with regard to our current incumbent. And I know that that's a result of why we're not getting access to the resources that we deserve. And so when you see the vacancy occurring in Albany with the lack of new bills being authored, introduced, and advanced into law, when you look at the legislative summary following this legislative session, and you will see, the number of bills that were actually authored and introduced and signed into law by the incumbent. I think that the facts speak for themselves. And so being a 28-year-old young woman working in the state legislature has definitely had its challenges, but I'm really excited to work off of the progress that we've made, advancing the Reproductive Health Act, for example, which codified Roe v. Wade, advancing the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, one of the most progressive climate change measures that was introduced in the nation. I think that these are really great points to work off of, and that I have the skill set necessary to really deliver for my constituents, and that I'm committed to my constituents. Put all policy aside, put all tax dollar funding coming back to the district aside. I'm serving this community. I'm building an agenda with the constituents by my side, and I'm maximizing representation, not barely scratching the surface. And I think that that's important.
Okay. I don't think this can go by without a reaction from Sarahana on the fact that on the criticism. So you want to respond to that?
We can give 1 minute to each side.
Okay.
Sure. In my first 18 months in office, 79 bills I introduced or co-sponsored have passed in the Assembly. And that is because of the teamwork and advocacy that I'm doing. For bills I introduced, I needed to gather support from my colleagues. For bills that my colleagues introduced, I needed to be the support to push those along. I was also able to pass a bill that my predecessor had been unable to, which was to commemorate Sojourner Truth on the state calendar. And even though that might sound very easy to innocent ears, it was actually quite difficult to pass that. And I passed that early this year. And it was a bill I inherited from my predecessor that had not been able to pass in the Assembly. Money has not stopped coming back to this district. There is no data to back that statement. We have funded pots of money in the budget that has come back, over $1 million from Council on Arts alone, millions of dollars from the DOT, from Office of Aging. We've funded new buckets this year that will come back. We've supported grant applications for over millions of dollars. We've nominated recipients through our office. We're trying to fund bus shelters for UCAT. There's a lot going on. So there's simply no data to back the claim that there's no money coming back to the district.
Okay, Gabi, go ahead. You got 1 minute, and that's it.
Yeah, so I would just disagree, obviously. Even if you pull up the budget bills, you will see the difference in funding coming into our district. When you look at the grants being allocated, you will see the difference in funding coming to our district. Even with these different grants that are administered through state agencies and regulatory authorities, it's the job of your state representative to be able to identify those funding allocations and serve as a lifeline between your communities and those different agencies to make sure we're securing those funds to come back to our district instead of it going to New York City or Long Island. And we're just not getting that same level of representation. That, paired with the fact that constituent services are barely offered and it took over a year to actually get them off the ground, is really disappointing. And I mean, to reject that is just, that's untrue. I've heard from a lot of constituents that had a really hard time getting in touch with your office and organizations, library directors, these people that rely on their state reps to negotiate a budget on their behalf year after year, that can't even get in touch with their representative. I mean, there's reasons why I decided to run. And it was one red flag after the next. And that's why I stepped up. I never thought I was going to run for elected office myself, but recognizing the need, that's why I stepped up. And there was a clear need. And even if you backtrack on social media and websites, you will see a clear activity change once my candidacy was announced. And I think that that's noteworthy. Someone shouldn't have to be told how to do their job when they're being paid $140 grand a year.
Okay. What do you, Yvonne,
we need to move. We need to go.
We need to do what?
We need to go. We need to end this.
Yeah. Okay.
But
right.
I appreciate. Yeah. Thank you both for participating in the debate. Paul, take it.
Yeah. Yeah, we do appreciate it. And we will post this debate on our webpage soon after we're done here, and there'll be a print and website story for tomorrow. So we appreciate you guys being here very much. This is something that we have done in the past many times, and it usually gets a lot of viewership once it goes up. So thank you very much for participating, and good luck to both of you come this January 25th, the Democratic primary for the
June 25th.
103rd Assembly seat. Huh?
June 25th.
Okay. I talked too long.
Thanks, guys.
No, it's okay. Thanks. Appreciate
about
it.
Have a
that.
good one.
Thanks.
Okay,
Bye.
we'll see you.